and so now it's my pleasure to first introduce Alicia Cervera La Madrid, Managing Partner with Cervera Real Estate.
Next on the panel is Philip J. Spiegelman. He is Principal of ISG World.
And we have Edgardo de Fortuna, President of Fortune International Realty. And these are the people who represent the vast number of new developments that have been and are continuing to be marketed in our South Florida marketplace. So these are the best people to tell us what's really going on with the new construction market. Linda, I'm going to have you go to that podium and start with the questioning, and the guys, please move this one off stage for me. Oh, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start with the first question. You guys, I'm going to ask it to the whole panel, so you guys tell me who wants to answer it and if you all want to comment. The first question is, what are in your opinion, in the new construction market, what are the top 3 things currently impacting Miami real estate the most?
Okay,
Well,
so the bad
turn
news
it on.
is those were the AV guys who have to go turn your mics on.
oh, well, that would help.
It's not on.
Okay. Is yours on?
It's on.
But it's not on.
No?
Yeah, I think now.
Okay, great. Hey,
Hello?
good morning, everybody. I just want to go on record and say that it's very hard to follow Anthony. All of us here agree. You know, we wanted to come up here and just go ditto, ditto, ditto. And we spend a lot of time looking at the statistics and the facts that surround our markets, and what they provide is absolutely invaluable for you as realtors to have the kind of information necessary to compete in this industry. Going back to the question, the top 3 things. I think first and foremost you have to understand that exactly what we were just talking about is a real fact. The market is taking a breath. The market's not going away. The market isn't crashing. It's a very positive step. And when you think positively, then you can take the most important parts away, which is you can still prospect for clients, you can still go sell what we have to offer, and you can do it with confidence and enthusiasm. So number 1 is understand the market, know where we are in the cycle, be able to talk intelligently about the products that you're offering or that are available, and don't give up. You have to go in there. It's very hard. Our industry is a business where you take a lot of no's before you get a yes. And this is a moment in time where we hear a lot of no's because people are undecided or people are concerned or they're nervous and afraid. So the best advice of all is understand your product and keep working at it. The people that want to be here are still very interested. We get a chance, all of us, to travel around the world and promote Miami and South Florida. And there's no lack of enthusiasm, regardless of the country, the city. Everybody wants to know what we're doing, and everybody has an interest. So keep feeding into that.
The thing that has surprised me most of late is how bullish my owners are and my developers are. We all know that Miami has become a wealthier city. That's clear by all the statistics, by everything we're seeing. And of course, we're going to have more product in the multi-million dollar range, because let's face it, not so long ago, we were like Fort Lauderdale. That didn't exist in our marketplace. So it has to grow, and we have to have choices. And if you have 65 homes coming on board, well, that's not that many choices. I don't know about you all, but I can remember showing 65 houses at one point in my life to one buyer. So it's not a tremendously unusual thing. Now, what is unusual to me is when I have what I call the big boys, and as you can see, I'm surrounded by boys, and yes, they are the big boys still for the most part in the development world. They are incredibly bullish in Miami and furious at the negative press. And I'm getting calls from them to me telling me, what are these people, morons? Aren't they looking at the world? Aren't they looking at the statistics? And they're also keenly aware that the market is not going to be as predictable as we know, and completely unafraid by that. They will look at me and say, Alicia, we're going to build this building. If it takes longer, that's okay. We know that construction financing is hard to get. We know that we're in a changing world, and we're going to build our building, and we have no question in our mind that Miami will respond as it's always responded, because when we come into a city, we don't look at 2 years or 3 years or even 5 years. We're looking at the trajectory of that city, and we're not looking at one continent or one state. We're looking at the world, because our developers are from the world. So we have, and continue to have, the biggest money, the most experienced developers who have the choice of going anywhere in the world, and they are coming to Miami and continue to come here. And that to me has been outstanding, because I always say no guts, no glory, and the developers have a lot of guts and therefore a lot of glory. But what I'm seeing now in the marketplace is really growing exponentially.
That's definitely true, and I think that in order to answer your question, also one thing that affects the most the market is perception, because eventually perception becomes reality, and that's what I applaud what we're doing here today, because we need to change that perception. We need to combat the headlines, because the reality is totally different. When they say that people are reducing the from 50% to 30% deposits, that's taken totally out of context. Those buildings that are reducing deposit schedules are because they don't need the money anymore. They are already 80-90% sold and closer to completion. So it's a marketing strategy, but it's certainly not an indication of what's happening in the market. The same thing happens when prices have gone down. That's absolutely not true. I mean, maybe units are getting smaller, and that's why if you compare absolute prices, the prices look like they're smaller prices. But the prices per square foot are the same or better than before. So we, as a group, need to combat that perception, because that eventually, if not, comes to haunt us. But if we do this type of things and we get out there and show the world that that's not the case, Miami is still going to be a very, very powerful city in the real estate market.
All right, so for our next question, as soon as I have sound or not. All right, so we want to know which foreign buyers are buying, and a part two is which emerging markets should we watch for? Which buyers are buying from which other countries, and which emerging markets?
Well, and I think that really is very much a factor of the location and kind of product that's being offered. But clearly Latin America has been the driving force in South Florida, new construction sales for sure, for as long as we can remember. The fact that there's always some form of economic distress or political instability is just a fact of life. One thing that we find that's particularly of interest in this cycle is that in previous cycles where we've seen one country or two countries be a full-time participant in the activity in the market, we're seeing almost every country providing some form of activity today, and certainly for the last several years in this cycle. So from one neighborhood or one micro market to another, it may be one country or one location dominating over another. Venezuela, Colombia, certainly we've seen a dramatic slowdown in Brazil for reasons that are being well publicized. Not only has their economy slowed down drastically, but they're going through a political situation with the impeachment of their president that has certainly distracted a large number of people. And by the way, that may ultimately turn around and provide us an impetus for those people that have been sitting on the fence to re-engage. So we fully expect to see Brazil become a very important, significant part of the market in the near future. But right now we're looking at Venezuela, at Colombia. We think Argentina is going to engage, but right now I think they're very focused. The Argentines are very focused on their own economy and the changing political landscape, if you will, and it's very positive, and they'll probably see increased investment in their own country. We also are seeing business out of smaller countries, Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile. Those are important markets to pay attention to, and will provide business for all of us, I think, in the coming year. Emerging markets, we all talk about China. Every one of us up here, and certainly all of you in the audience, have been hearing about China, China, China. And the old proverb that said, when is the best time to plant a tree? Usually about 20 years ago. We've been engaged in trying to promote business in China now for the last 2 years. At ISG, we've just formed a new company called ISG International, which is 100% focused on developing and creating the same kind of network and involvement that we have over the last 25 years in Latin America to do the same thing in Asia. We think that's the future, and the key points that are saying that this market will ultimately not only find Miami, embrace it, but be probably one of the most significant investors in our local economy. We believe very strongly that that's the future. So we continue to spend a lot of our time and effort in Latin America. We believe the Europeans, by the way, find their way to our doorstep. We've never really developed the same kind of network, if you will, throughout Europe that we have in Latin America, but the Europeans are here, and obviously they have a love affair with Miami as well. So, you know, international markets can't be ignored. They represent a huge part of our business, and that's where we want to continue to be.
So we looked at one of our buildings at ARIA the other day, which is an active sales program with about 70% of those condos built under construction. And I was surprised to see that we had 36 different countries represented in our buyer pool, which is amazing to me. We've always been international, but 36 is a lot of countries. Yeah, really. So I think that's going to be a continuing trend. We are seeing the buyers coming up from a wider diversification of countries. For us, kind of interesting is Istanbul. I like to see the new flights that are coming into town, because when we get direct airlift, we know that more people are coming. And if you combine airlift with, God forbid, a terrorist attack, then Miami becomes an ever-increasing choice, because it does continue to be a safe haven to come to the United States. And of course, in the United States, as Tony pointed out, it's New York and Miami, and forget the rest of the country, because that's what people are looking at. You have, of course, in the West Coast, if they're coming from China, and we too are very focused on China with a Chinese division, and we're happy to say that ARIA, the Asian Realtor Association that our President of Development Sales is president of, is coming for their national convention next year. So I hope you all focus on that, and it's an opportunity to broaden your network with that clientele, which is important and growing. And these experts in the Chinese market, in markets that are already very prevalent, like San Francisco and Seattle, et cetera, LA, will be here. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to get to know Miami better.
That's scheduled for 2017?
It is. It's a done deal, so we're very excited about that. So I think that stay tuned for airlift from China. Everybody's working on it very hard, and it is imminent that it will come. And I think we're going to see more things happening in Europe because of the tenuous condition in Europe. And the dollar, of course, is very strong. But as all things in life become the new normal, people get used to that and figure out ways to make it work for them.
I absolutely echo what you guys are saying. I agree with you that, for instance, in Jay's Signature, our project in Sunny Isles, of 184 sales of the 192 units that we have, 23 different nationalities there. So it's really, the world is in love with Miami today, and it shows in everything that we do. One thing that they failed to mention is that it's also the U.S. market, especially the Northeast market, is really strong now. I mean, we've seen more and more, especially excuse me, on the beach, we see the U.S. market that before was 5 or 6% of the overall sale out of a new building, now is in the 20s and 30s and 40%. So, and the same thing is happening in Broward. We're developing Auberge in Fort Lauderdale, and close to 80% of the buyers are U.S. buyers. So the new contacts and alliances between you and some of the Northeast brokers, it's paying off. So keep up the good work.
Hello? Okay. In terms of foreign buyers, what interesting trends are you seeing? Characteristics, buyer characteristics, neighborhoods, property types, prices?
I think they're all over the place. And by the way, just as a follow-up to Edgardo, it's no wonder the Wall Street Journal's upset with us. All the New Yorkers are coming here, you know? So, and nothing hasn't happened on a regular basis. As Miami grows, they freak out a little bit more every time.
Well, they can still get their Wall Street Journal here in Miami, by the way.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So I think we kind of covered the
Well,
foreign
but
nationals.
yeah, the buyers, because of the rate of exchange and because of the economic situation, especially in Latin America, the trend is to a little bit of a lower price point. I mean, they're not looking that much at the price per square foot necessarily, especially on the beach, but because of the adjustment and because of the 50% deposits, especially in new product, they are looking for lower. I mean, it used to be 4 or 5 million was the standard, or we were building bigger units, and now in the new developments or in the new projects, we're looking at shrinking those units, maybe trying to do the same amenities and quality of the building, but in the smaller units to try to lower the total price point, and that's, I think, it's going to continue to be a trend for a little bit.
Philip, anything to add?
Well, the only thing that I would add to that is that in the upper price ranges or the upper luxury markets, you have to remember that these people have choices. They can do nothing. They're not under any urgency to do anything now other than their own need or desire to have something new. But more importantly, they have a lot of choices. They're under no urgency. They're not rushing. So we see the time frame that it takes to close these large price transactions taking longer and longer. And I think there's a point there is that you don't give up. Every prospect is still a prospect until they tell you to F off. Pardon my French. But in fact, that's the truth. You work a prospect and work it and continue to work it, and you don't give up, and particularly in the upper price ranges, it pays to keep after them. Ultimately, I think you get a better result by just sticking with it and continuing to promote whatever you have to offer.
Thank you. So I hope you guys are catching some of these great sound bites. You know, the world is in love with Miami, so many of the other things. I had them take a picture because it's killing me to not be able to tweet these out, you know, as we go along. But these are really incredibly important for you. These are the kinds of things the kinds of phrases that you need to remember and use in your marketing. It is so powerful. And so we've kind of talked around it, but how do you respond when you hear the media irresponsibly using words like bust or doom?
Well, thank you, because that's something that we talk about every day. All of us in our industry, I mean, we are constantly amazed, year after year, cycle after cycle, how the media just likes to take a shot at Miami. I don't know if they're jealous. I don't know if they, they have Miami envy, whatever it may be. And the old saying that if it bleeds, it leads, it makes better headlines. But the fact of the matter is that we, and Edgardo said it before, perception becomes reality. It's our job to be out there telling a positive story. We have the facts, we have the information, we have this incredible environment that we live in, and we as representatives of this market are responsible to have to go out and counter negative press. We'll never get the press to do a retraction. So even when Anthony says that, he was misquoted, and clearly he was, and if he wrote a letter to the editor and said, please modify that information, they're not going to do it, and if they did, it would be somewhere buried where nobody would see it. So we're not going to change the trends of the media, but we as individual ambassadors of South Florida have to be out there telling positive information and given the facts. I mean, you have a wealth of information between the Realtors Association, between IRR, the publications. ISG puts out a Miami report. Whatever you can get your hands on that helps to change and affect how people perceive our environment here in South Florida, that's your tool. You have to use it. Use your social media. Use your own, direct contact. But that's the way we begin to respond and react and overcome negative publicity.
And for my part, I've seen an improvement in the market. So a lot of these numbers that we looked at, I mean, we had a couple of months when the dollar took an immediate jump where things really slowed tremendously. And what I've seen is a continuing improvement in the marketplace. If you want to talk about a miserable market, forget the last recession. Go back to right after 9/11. That was a miserable market. So the market is moving. I think it's moving more. When I'm selling 10, 12, 15 units in a month at a project, I am not complaining. Of course, it doesn't matter what I sell. The developers would like to see twice that number. It's never enough. However, when things are selling in this marketplace and buyers are coming to the sales office, they are afraid. If you are not afraid, they will calm down. The reason that buyers come to professionals, the reason I go to an attorney when I get handed a stack of 50 papers is because A, I don't want to read them, and B, when I do read them, I'm not sure I understood them, and C, even if I think I understood them, I want to make sure I did. So until that lawyer says to me, it's okay to sign, I'm not going to sign. So these people are in Miami because they love it, they are in love with the city, they're looking because they want something, and they really want you to tell them it's okay to buy. It's like when you're in that store and you see those fabulous pair of shoes and you're wondering, should I spend $1,000 on those fabulous pair of shoes that are really uncomfortable and I'm only going to wear 3 times? And that salesperson looks at you and says, you know, your husband's going to love those shoes. And I'm sure nothing else makes your body look that good. You just buy those shoes. So our buyers are looking for that same kind of feedback. They're looking for you to give them the confidence to do what they're here to do and what they want to do. So help them get to the finish line.
And I think that we're trying to do some of that job for you, not only from the buyer's perspective, but from the seller's perspective. Unfortunately, we all, and I include myself in the development area, we fall in love with our own projects and sometimes are unrealistic or think that if it continues to go up, we can price it even higher. I spent substantial amount of time today trying to bring the developers to realistic numbers because, for instance, in Miami Beach, everybody compares the sales of their projects to Faena, and Faena is all at $3,000 and $4,000 a square foot, and for many circumstances, I'm very happy with those sales, but they were in somewhat unusual sales. So you can't compare yourself or price. If they are at 4,000, I should be at 3,000. Sometimes that doesn't work, and we have to show them with data and with the proper information that the buyer today is looking for value. And if we're going to continue to launch projects, we need to price them right and to create the value and perception of value to the buyer, because if not, they're going to slow down. But we're trying to do that, and the new product and the new projects, we're conscious of that perception of pricing is very, very important too.
For those of us who have lived here a long time, we've seen Miami drastically change, transform itself. But even in the last 5-10 years, it's changed so much. Where do you guys see Miami, the South Florida market, in 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think one thing that's constant here is demand and interest, and that demand and interest continues to grow on a wider and wider basis. So the diversity, the demographics, excuse me, of where our customers are coming from. You just heard both Alicia and Edgardo say that the 38 or 36 different countries, 25 different countries in one building. I think that's an indication of what the future is for the next 5 to 10 years, with growing demand or constant or increasing demand, a moderate increase in supply because we're limited by geography, and I think we will see more projects that'll come as a result of buildings being torn down, old condominiums being bought out. This is what's happening in today's cycle. That's how we'll renew land and other opportunities. So the future landscape, and Anthony said it earlier, it'll be more multifamily. We don't believe there's any lack of demand, but increasing demand, certainly as we spread our story and our availability, our access to other countries around the world. We think direct flights from China are imminent, and it will make a dramatic difference. So the outlook for South Florida, when you look at not just the real estate industry, but other industries that have come here that are really building and growing, and an education system that causes people from offshore to want to send their children to not only get educated, but those same children want to stay here and make a life. That's where we think the future of South Florida is. It's bright, it's healthy, and continuing to grow.
Of course, I agree that our future is phenomenal, and anyone who's lived here for more than a minute, I think, feels that instantly. When we talk about Miami being one of the fastest growing cities in the country, what we're really saying is it's one of the fastest growing cities in the world. And I don't see that slowing down in any way. One of the great things that's happening is that we're being connected with all aboard. So when we've talked about a tri-county economy and the impact of that, well, now we are becoming a commutable tri-county, which is so important. I think we'll see more of that connectivity. I also think that our obsession with our traffic problem will subside as we understand that that's part of the beauty of living in a cosmopolitan urban area. So we get out of our cars and we're going to embrace the walkability of our city, which continues to grow. I see a Michelin-rated restaurant in our future, a star-rated restaurant. There's a wonderful gastronomic competition going on. Of course, our Science Museum is going to get finished, and that's going to be exciting. And now we have a Latin American museum that they're trying very hard to build. Our universities are going to continue to grow. Our medical system is getting stronger and stronger, and we are going to become Silicon Beach, and that is well underway, and it's going to continue to happen. I also think that this trend from Americans moving to Miami is going to continue. We see it with our young people. When our kids were growing up, I think we were all worried that they would leave and not come back. Now they're coming back, their friends are coming back, their friends' friends are coming back, because these are where their jobs are. This is where the opportunity is. This is the tip of the arrow. It's a new city, it's a clean city, it's a dynamic city, and it's a city that represents the world. And that is increasing astronomically as the depth of our culture and the history of our city starts to mature and reach another level. So it's all good things for Miami, in spite of the little ups and downs that we'll continue to have as everything in life.
I absolutely agree. I think that the arts and the culture are going to continue to grow in Miami. We have become a major capital city in all aspects of it, and education is a key component. I'm at the advisory board of the real estate school at the University of Miami, and we had a meeting yesterday, and it went from not being in the top 50, the real estate school and the business school at the University of Miami is ranked 32 in the country today. So all those things are attracting new people and are attracting the bright minds. And as Anthony said, the barrier of entry today to get a piece of waterfront property in Miami. If anybody has a big waterfront piece of property in Miami, I'm a buyer. But it's really very, very difficult. They're almost non-existent anymore. As Phil would say, we are buying existing condominiums. The last acquisition was 346 condominiums, one by one, 2.5 years to be able to terminate the condominium and knock it down and get a waterfront, oceanfront piece of property. That's what's happening today in Miami, and that's why the values of special properties are going to continue to rise, because it's impossible to create anymore, and people have to understand that, and the flattening of prices at any given moment is just a temporary situation. The scarcity of waterfront property is going to continue to be there, and we need to take advantage of that opportunity.
And I think just to add to that point is we tend to think in terms of South Florida, Miami-Dade County, and we spent time with Anthony talking about Broward. Don't overlook Broward and Palm Beach. There are trends taking place now that make that a markets that we should be concentrating on, providing both diversity in price, location, amenities, etc. And I think you'll see growth continue in those directions north. And round out and balance what we have going on here in Miami-Dade County as well. Just a greater market to be able to work with.
Thank you. That's a great prompter, because remember, well, actually, 10 minutes ago, Palm Beach data became live again in Miami's matrix system. And it takes a little longer to feed back into ML Exchange and Fusion, but they tell me by Monday morning, scheduled for hopefully 7 a.m., just before I'm going to care, that it will be available. Palm Beach data will also be available there. One of my team was just reminding me, as we're sending out these announcements, we should remind everyone that we have Palm Beach and Martin County. And so you have 4 counties, full counties worth of MLS data for every property that is listed by any of 60,000 real estate professionals. And yeah, 42,000 are ours, but it's nice to have the others as well. And so you have all of that data and all of that information available to you, which is very important. One of the things Alicia said was talking about us being a walkable city. One of the other stats that the research team came up with is he said we are the 5th most walkable city in the United States. And I said, really? And where did that come from? Came from WalkScore. I said, they should know. So one of the sheets that you have is Miami in the rankings. And so we've got first, second, fourth, fifth, sixth, and top 10. Whatever it is, those are key points that are really pretty amazing to know. Alicia also mentioned Istanbul. And so we were actually at the launch when the airlines first announced nonstop flights to Istanbul. And so that market is going to continue coming on board. She also mentioned that they're working on the nonstop flights to China, and that will happen. And the ambassador for, the chief counsel for China, his headquarters is in Houston, and he has committed to opening a branch of the consulate here in Miami, a branch of his consulate there in Houston. And so it's just a matter of time before that's going to happen. And so all of these things are coming. You guys have given us such great information, amazing sound bites and marketing clips that we can use. For a final question, as our market changes and transitions, what is the best advice that you have for our agents to be most successful, and/or any wrap-up comments that you would have?
Well, I'll go back to something I said earlier, and I reinforce this throughout our company constantly. Have information, use that information wisely. It's all available to you. You have every tool in the book. But putting together a story, putting together a presentation that ultimately leads to a very simple conclusion. Why Miami? Because of, and then use the information that you have available. If you tell that story, if you tell it with facts, if you tell it with enthusiasm, I promise you'll see results in terms of your sales and productivity.
I think staying active and staying informed. Remember that you can't be all things to all people, so try to be the best thing to the people that you're servicing in the market that you're servicing. I'm also going to say something that may appear a little bit odd in a commission-driven industry, but he who pays the best commission is not often the best product. So take a look at where you're taking your customer and make sure that your integrity isn't going to be challenged at the end of a transaction when they're seeing a 10% commission being paid. And if they are going to see that, they should know that they're going to see that, because it may raise some eyebrows. So be professional in your approach. Ask the right questions. You're going to get the right answers. And work with people that you respect in the industry. Take advantage of all the tremendous opportunities there are. And remember to wake up every morning and be grateful, because we live in the best city in the world that gives us the most opportunities every day, all day long.
Absolutely agree with that. I mean, be prepared. The buyer today is a lot more sophisticated than it used to be. The information, it's out there, so they know and understand it. And so if you're not prepared and if you don't know it, they really discard you. So you need to be aware of everything that is going on. And also on the selling side of new product, there's a shift to quality today. The buyer is looking to make sure that the developer, it's a quality developer, that the product is going to be built, and that they're not putting 50% into something that might not get done. So study and recognize what the projects that really have those characteristics are, because if not, you're going to not look very good with your buyer. It's clear that the buyer already is sensing that, and because of the news, they really are concentrating on quality products that have quality developers that are going to get done. If you mind, I want to comment on something that Anthony said about construction costs, because I agree 100% that construction costs are very, very high and haven't come down yet. But in the last 2 years, I used to have to call contractors and subcontractors and take them out to lunch for them to quote on my jobs and pamper them. This year, they're calling me to take me out for drinks. So it's a little shift. I mean, they haven't lowered the prices yet, but the smart contractor are seeing that the construction is not going to continue in the way it is. So I think that the prices are going to come down. At least the margins are going to come down somewhat, and we'll see better pricing altogether.
All right, let's hear it for this amazing panel. Thank you so much.